the Supreme Court of Kenya today gave a detailed full judgment of the presidential election petition of 2022, which upheld Dr. William Samoei Ruto's win, and that therefore sets the petitioners, the Azimio la Umoja camp, in the opposition in administering their duties of keeping checks in the government. The Azimio leaders held protests today outside the IEBC offices, demanding for reinstatement of the Deputy CEO Ruth Kulundu. What is the fate, therefore, of the House, which is opposing the government, which with the cracks that emerged over the House leadership? And therefore, that forms the basis of our discussion tonight. And joining me is Sankara Kennedy, who is a political commentator. Thank you so much, Sankara, for dedicating your time for this discussion.
Thank you.
All right. Now, looking at the political landscape, we have seen today the Supreme Court of Kenya giving a detailed judgment of the verdict that they rendered concerning the 2022 presidential election petition. So we saw when the verdict was being rendered, the Azimio camp was not contented with how the Apex Court, the Supreme Court, conducted the judgment. So this detailed judgment that was released today by the Supreme Court, does it give now satisfactory reasons to the Azimio camp, since they were not contented with what the judges released during the day when they were rendering the verdict?
Kenneth, allow me tell you that not only are they seeming not contented by the judgment, but I would confirm to you that even the people of Kenya were not interested on what was to be rendered by the Supreme Court. In referring to the judgment, the initial declaration by the Supreme Court, the Azimio Brigade termed it as abusive language.
Yes.
This automatically drove their attention far away from Supreme Court related activities. And in my personal consciousness, I would question the decision arrived by the Supreme Court to deliver the judgment on Gmail. How many Kenyans are on Gmail? How many Kenyans can read that information? With regards to public interest, the information must have not met, or it's a clear indication that the consumption of that information was for a specific group of people. Not every Kenyan is on Gmail. Not every Kenyan knows what a Gmail is. Actually, I've traversed this country on political errands, and I can confidently and authoritatively confirm to you that this Gmail is just hot air. Not everyone knows exactly what Gmail is in Kenya. So if it's a matter of urgency that every person is entitled to that information, it is delivered on Gmail, a lot of people are cut off. And we all understand the disadvantages of oral communication. There is elements of omissions, exaggerations, and such kind of information bias related activities that may affect the original information or the intention of the communication. Number two, we saw the highlights that the Supreme Court gave on...
Maybe just to cut you off a little bit, because you're saying that not many Kenyans are conversant with Gmail. It did not, the detailed judgment did not arrive into everyone's Gmail account. It only arrived to those who are subscribed, of course, who are interested in the full judgment. And probably if it's reaching, is the information reaching Kenyans? That's why I probably think the media comes in, because we shall be having this full judgment, of course, even in the papers tomorrow. What do you think?
Well, I believe I'm loyal to my consciousness. And when I say every Kenyan is entitled to that information, those are just secondary thoughts that they will be on papers. My main concern is, just as they were delivering the judgment, it was on radios, it was on televisions, and that was the main activity. What makes the difference today? They had all the time to even give us the headlines. In summary, the Supreme Court has directed IEBC to do ABCD. That one would make a lot of sense. But telling us the Gmail thing, well, they are entitled to what they feel they should be doing. But I also as a patriotic citizen, I'm entitled to my opinion.
Right.
Yes, there are no established guidelines on how I should access those information, but they are bound to communicate.
Right.
Yes.
All right, you are continuing. I just cut you off on what you're saying.
Yeah, and we saw some peculiar remarks being given by the Supreme Court. And if I may quote, the Supreme Court directed IEBC to put its house in order. This is a very sensitive content. By virtue of utterance of house being put in order, there is a clear indication and submission that omissions must have been done or duplications of roles at the IEBC Commission.
Yes.
And by the Supreme Court telling IEBC to develop guidelines that separates the policy and administrative functions within the Commission, that is a clear indication that there is someone who is more than IEBC within the IEBC. And they went ahead to speak on the Commission's, the chairperson's roles, supervisory roles, and accountability responsibilities. And when we refer to the Supreme Court case filed by the Azimio One Kenya Coalition, the IEBC was pointed fingers at having overacted, or some individuals within the IEBC overacted or duplicated roles of others. So that really raises questions on the credibility of that elections, because if the Supreme Court is not convinced on the roles of Wafula Chebukati, Juliana Cherera, Abdi Gulia and the rest, Lolu or whoever, I don't know, I may not quote the right name, but they are not really aware of individual roles, then that clearly points out that IEBC was somehow on autopilot during elections. Anyone could do anything as long as they're in the commission. That automatically puts the will of the people at jeopardy. And therefore, those are critical issues that we as the people of Kenya must analyze critically so as to determine the veracity of the information that is being passed from this body. If the Supreme Court is not aware of what the chairperson should do, because by virtue of telling the IEBC to put its house in order, it automatically points out that there is some bits of disorderliness in the commission, and that the most endangered species or group of individuals here are the people of Kenya, who entrusted the constitutional responsibility of delivering a free, fair, verifiable, credible elections to the people of Kenya. Also, they touched on the technology deployed by IEBC, and they supported IEBC protection of the server and the Form 34A, printing and etc. The Azimio argued that the technology deployed by IEBC did not meet the basic constitutional thresholds of an election technology. That is verifiability, integrity, transparency, and simplicity. A lot of things. These are constitutional pronouncements. They are not Sankara words. They are words found in our constitutions, especially in our constitution in regards to matters electoral process. So by just looking at a sample of what was spoken at the Supreme Court, it clearly revamps the belief in the Azimio Brigade that not everything went right as it has been said. But being that we are in a democratic society, the Supreme Court had already made its declaration. They have to accept, but they have to respect in as much as they disagree with it.
Yes. All right. Now, following that, of course, maybe we're talking of the Supreme Court telling the Electoral Commission, IEBC, to put the house in order. We saw what happened after the presidential election and the declaration. Of course, what we saw today is the Azimio camp, leaders allied to the Azimio, are protesting at the anniversary towers for the reinstatement of the Deputy CEO, that is Ruth, of course, to be reinstated back to office. So why is it that this has not been condemned by the government of the day? If it was not done the right way, it's not been condemned by the government of the day. So is it that we are seeing the opposition, of course, now coming into play, their roles, of course, in keeping checks in the government?
Well, I would question the Azimio's move, whether it is in line with pursuit of institutional correctness, or it is in line with alignment with individuals in various independent institutions. There is a laid down procedure on termination of responsibilities in every public office. If I'm not wrong, I paid my time during the Supreme Court case and had the Supreme Court judge, or the Chief Justice Martha Koome, say it is not within their responsibility to find Wafula Chebukati culpable of those electoral offences and render punishment, e.g. removal of him from office, being that will be acting as they will be usurping the powers of the lower courts.
Right.
So by referring to that statement, if the law was not followed, due process in the removal of the Deputy CEO from office, then Wafula Chebukati should be actually made responsible by being charged before a court of law, so that he understands that the Constitution is not a creative convenience. It is the rule of law. Whether you like it or not, you have to be submissive to it. Number two, the government condemning the movement, the move by the Azimio, that is a relative thought on their side. But I would wish to speak or touch something on how they reacted to that particular scenario.
Yes.
The rights to pickpocket, those are constitutional, inalienable constitutional rights.
Yes.
They are documented.
The right to picket.
Yes, I mean, we don't need to ask people for permissions to do the right thing. As long as law, order, and safety is maintained,
yes,
no one should be questioned on what happened. But again, the police will tell you, me, I'm a product or a victim of arrest on the picket demonstrations. I remember I was arrested some time back for participating in a patriotic context in Sabasaba demos, and I was charged with various unjustifiable criminal offenses. And the police were arguing that we must get you a notice. We must get you a notice so that we provide you securities, because thugs take advantage of such constitutional moments to interfere with public peace, property, and order.
Right.
Well, the argument is on merit, but being that politics, it is a political process, and political process is a very extremely difficult scenario to understand, because you may think you are right until you realize the right is not the actual right.
Sure.
Yeah. So that move of tear gas lobbying at those people, the protesters, to me, I must condemn it. It is causing unnecessary mayhem. Why did they let the people do the right thing when they stormed the office? They ought to have seen or waited until they cause commotion that is against the law. Then our police service or the police force would have moved in. You don't stop people who have not even caused any damage somewhere by lobbying tear gas. In fact, the person in charge of command should be made answerable. The president has just been speaking about the independence of the police, and when I'm speaking here, I'm not speaking in alignment to any political affiliation. I believe I'm an independent patriot, and I must stand with my consciousness. My highest loyalty is owed to my consciousness, my integrity, not to individuals. So that must not have happened. They ought to have waited for some few minutes to see what actually could succeed the events, but you don't proceed with violence.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course now that would raise questions, because looking at the conduct of how the police was supposed just to maintain peace and order, of course them lobbing tear gas to people who are doing peaceful demonstrations, because we saw people like TJ Kajwang saying that whatever they were doing, they were doing it in alignment to the constitution, but the police officers who were supposed to probably give them security now are lobbing tear gas at them. So moving forward, I mean, which picture does this really paint? Because in a protest that they were making, of course, protesting of the unlawful, of course, rather calling for reinstatement of Ruth Kulundu, for that matter, in the position of the Deputy CEO, was probably doing the right thing, because she was being removed from office, but it was not done the right way. Yes. Meaning, even the government itself, the government of the day should have come out, of course, to defend Kulundu on her position. So what does this, which picture does this paint in our political landscape moving forward? Does it really create fear for people who want to protest against bad things being done in the government? Of course, probably refraining from going ahead into doing what they probably feel it should be done.
The Kenya Kwanza sang freedom is here, freedom is coming.
Yes.
Was it freedom to curtail individual documented constitutional rights? Mm-hmm. That is not the definition of freedom, I know, not unless it changed. And the action at the anniversary towers is a clear definition of the criminality or criminal nature of our police service. These are people who are hell-bent on causing chaos whenever peaceful, public, constitutional moments are in action. Instead of providing security to people who are picketing peacefully and in a free environment, the police will always move fast with, they say they act on orders. I don't know how orders are interlinked with the constitutionalism of those independent institutions. I believe we must have an independent police service where the people who are in police service must be made to understand. And I'm not saying should, I'm not providing rooms for second thought. I'm saying must, to close that chapter. They must be told that there are constitutional freedoms and rights in the constitution that do not beg for their approval for them to be executed. They were not part of the struggle. They must not be part of the people impeding the modifications of those rights. They must not be perfect, but their roles must be categorical, providing peace and security, maintaining law and order, which disorder was created by these people marching peacefully towards the IEBC headquarters. They just wanted to ensure that constitution is put to the maximum exploitation. When I'm wrongful in an office, the removal procedure must be constitutional or must be in line with the constitutional dictates on removal of a public officer from office. But in Kenya, we are suffering from what we call institutional incorrectness or lack of uprightness in our institutions. Independent institutions have been used to perpetuate political agenda and also do political revenge. I may not speak in a cowardice manner, because we saw the government of today applauded a sect of IEBC staffs. That was, to me, a wrong move. The IEBC do not need to be in bed with anyone. They need to be in bed with the law.
All right, but
so
anyway,
giving appliances to one side automatically raises questions on how within the how.
All right.
That is something that we need to know. So for me, it is very wrong lobbing tear gas canisters. We need those tear gas canisters can be used. Those are taxpayers' money. You don't just need to throw a tear gas canister because you have something that can throw a tear gas canister. They are designed for a specific activity. Let them wait for serious activities where tear gas canisters can be lobbied. They should use them, but not on serious people. These are lawmakers. They were MPs. They know exactly what to do when. You can't tell me that those MPs were fools to go and demand for reinstatement of Kulundu as the Deputy CEO if she was rightfully removed from office.
All right, Sankara, thank you for that. Now, of course, now looking at the opposition, of course, we saw them coming out rightfully. These are some of the functions of the opposition, keeping checks in the government, and there have been cracks emerging, of course, in the Azimio camp. We're talking of the Azimio camp, of course, we know it's made up of very many parties, but in the ODM house, where then the names that were proposed for the position of the majority whip and the majority leaders were not did not sit well with some of the Azimio members allied to the ODM party. So from what we saw, of course, during this naming of these nominations, the names, of course, that were given, provisional names for these positions, do you think these have a threshold of probably causing divisions in the Azimio camp, in the opposition camp? Because we saw people who are supposed to be so strong, people who have stood strong with the ODM camp, of course, now giving negative comments concerning the House leadership.
Politicians must shun from selfish attitudes. It was pathetic to hear, and I will quote these individuals. You know, Opiyo Wandayi was elected by the people of Ugenya. John Mbadi was nominated by ODM. How, where on earth do Mbadi expect, by virtue of being an ODM chair, to be the majority whip leader, and against Opiyo, who was elected by the people? Common sense may not be common to everyone, but at that particular point in time, and with serious political parties like ODM, that is something that should be cutting across. And number two, politics is dirty. Actually, politics is a clean game being played by dirty people. Politics is never dirty. It is the people, the players, who are dirty. It will not be a surprise to me to find that the people in government have an hand on what may be likely to happen in ODM as a move to weaken the opposition. We've seen, they say, those with functional eyes don't need not to be told what to see. Right. They can actually employ the five senses of a human being to arrive at a conclusion or give a possible outcome. The activities that succeeded the swearing in of the president, Dr. William Ruto, was a clear indication on the mean appreciation of the roles of opposition in its government. And a dysfunctional opposition in the 21st century is a clear and exposure of the ordinary citizenry to a cruel human lifestyle. We saw when the opposition went in bed with the government, no one was there to question the government, put checks and balances. You saw that is when the prices for basic commodities shot at a very exorbitant rate, and no one was there to question. So the opposition must remain the opposition. There we'll agree with the president. Let everyone play their role. All right. And as much as the opposition in Kenya is not constitutionally recognized, but they are because they are the minority constitutionally. Let them do their role.
All right. Probably because of the interest of time, we have seen now the president, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, exercising his powers and authorities in the capacity of president. We saw him during the UNGA summit in New York, when he gave a detailed address on climate change. He came back, of course, we have seen him today flagging off relief food to the counties that have been affected by drought. So we are already counting into his 100 days in office. Will he deliver to the threshold of will he deliver rather to the promises and the manifestos he made to the Kenyans, starting to see from how he's been exercising his duties in the capacity of president?
Actually, it is not a question of will he, it is an answer of he must.
Yes.
You know, when he was making promises, he was looking for a job. Actually, he was not doing anyone a favor. The president was on a mission to get a job, and that authority comes with responsibility.
Yes.
Being number one, you have to deliver. At this point in time, besides being an active political individual, I am an active environmentalist.
Yes.
I compare the engagement of my colleagues in Israel and what we do in Kenya. Actually, Kenya, we are just a blessed nation led by crooks and people who are underprivileged. Because if at all resources can be disseminated to individuals at the lower cadre, I'm telling you, we will produce surplus. In Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara ensured that from a begging economy to a surplus export economy through hard work. He had the people of Burkina Faso on the importance of individual commitment towards production. There is no sufficient economy that can stand the bureaucratic financial systems of this world today without proper production. The backbone of any economy stops and starts with production.
Right.
In other words, I'm just saying at this point in time, the president should not start with reliefs. He should do something that will prevent that relief food distribution in the next 5 years. We have the capacity. What are we lacking? We are actually, Pierre Lumumba once told us that the people in power have no ideas, while those without power have the ideas. But I believe for the first time, we have one of the sharpest brains in government. The president must not entertain the thought of this relief food distribution. We want food being produced from those areas. Tel Aviv was erected from a desert.
Yes.
Kenya, we are blessed to have some short rainfalls. We can produce food. We can make it. But, again, telling us that we are going for the Shamba system.
Yes.
I mean, and we are again agitating for climatic change or the COP, whatever, protection of the environment. That is being inconsiderate in the same statement.
Well, of course, now the environmental aspect, of course, that will probably form a very good discussion next time. Of course, when you're questioning on the legitimacy of what the deputy president was saying of reviving the Shamba system. And I think that makes it all for today. Let us carry on with the bulletin. Don't know whether my director is telling me take a break or we carry on with the bulletin. So let's just take a break. Still have much for you. Stay with us.